sehr filigran.
Very delicate yet powerful.
Sie waren ganz geeignet für dänische Verhältnisse.
They were well suited for Denmark. It is flat here, and these locomotives did not like steep inclines. It is very significant because it stands for mobility and technology. Steam engine fans will certainly love it. We traveled to Odense to get a look at this extraordinary steam locomotive. The Danish Railway Museum is located there.
Hier war eine Lokstube, die eigentlich sehr authentisch bewahrt ist.
This was a locomotive shed which was able to be preserved in a very authentic way. It was originally built in 1954. At that time it was believed that the small country railroads and local railroads had a bright future. That is why such a large layout was created. NOHAB locomotives were built for Denmark, Belgium, Hungary and other countries. And they were quite a sight to see. The first NOHABs were put into service in Denmark in 1954, and some are still in service. These engines were truly fantastic.
Und sie fahren jetzt weiter noch dieses Jahr und auch in den kommenden Jahren. So, das war ein fantastisches Lokomotiv und Maschine.
Even unusual specimens have a place here.
Es sieht so aus.
This locomotive here looks like it was always running backwards, and indeed it did. It was made for branch lines with a weak superstructure. At that time, around 1880, it had been determined that the railroad was necessary for agriculture.
Erfahren hatte, dass für den neuen Landwirtschaft Eisenbahn notwendig war.
The restored roundhouse has 21 tracks. Many classic vehicles and scenes from Danish railroad history are lovingly presented here. Bi-level passenger cars were already known in Copenhagen at the beginning of the 20th century.
Und hinter mich.
Behind me is a replica, a reproduction of the first locomotive in Denmark. It was called Odin.
Ersten Lokomotiv in Dänemark, Odin. Odin war auch die Lokomotiv, die...
The Odin was the locomotive that pulled the first train from Copenhagen to Roskilde. That was on June the 26th, 1847 at 11:30 a.m. Thus, the Danes will be celebrating the railroad's 175th anniversary this summer. They even had their own locomotive manufacturer through the industrial company called Frichs. Railway travel has many facets. In the 1970s, many young Danes also used the Interrail ticket. They used it to travel through Europe for a month. Memories of a carefree travel experience. The metropolis on the Seine has always been a popular destination. It's high time for our steam locomotive.
Diese Baureihe, die Gattung E, stammt ursprünglich aus Schweden. Dort wurde sie ca. 1913 gebaut.
The E-type originally came from Sweden. 11 were built there around 1913, but after just 25 years, they became obsolete in Sweden. The electrification of the lines began there very early.
Und damals wurde die Lokomotive dann nach Dänemark verkauft.
That is why the steam locomotives were then sold to Denmark at a rock-bottom price. It was good business for the Danish railway. The 11 locomotives were well suited for the environment in Denmark. They only needed a little rebuilding, because in Sweden people drove and still drive on the left track. At that time, traffic on the roads there was also on the left. Therefore, the locomotives had to be adapted so that they could be driven on the right track, as in Germany. The E-series has a few special details.
Diese spitze Rauchkammertür ist...
This pointed smoke chamber door is special. This also applies to the low-pressure cylinders. They are placed very high and at an angle.
Dann das Führhaus ist auch windschnittig.
The cab is streamlined. The tender is a so-called tub tender. These are the most striking
Das
features.
sind die markanten Merkmale.
The tender could hold 25 cubic meters of water and 6.5 tons of coal. Visitors to the museum can see the driver's cab up close. There is a good, if somewhat sad reason why 994 in particular is in such good condition.
Eine ganz besondere Geschichte.
There is a very special story behind this locomotive. It was very popular with the then King Frederick IX, and he wished to go on a last journey with this locomotive after his death. This locomotive was taken out of service in 1970 and fell into a dead sleep, so to speak.
In 1970 gestellt, aber zur Seite in sogenannte Dornröschenschlaf gestellt. Der König starb in 1972.
The king died in 1972, and so the locomotive was brought out again, together with a sister engine. Both locomotives then carried the king on his last journey from Copenhagen to Roskilde.
Das hat man abgeliefert.
A total of 25 Class E locomotives were built at Frichs, the only major locomotive manufacturer in Denmark, between 1942 and 1950. Thus, the C-coupled locomotives are actually also Danish locomotives. A half-O model of this legendary prototype is rolling into the program at Märklin and Trix just in time for the Danish Railway's 175th anniversary.
Die Lok hat einen ganz eigenen Charakter.
The locomotive has a very unique character. It is a very beautiful engine. With the model, it was a challenge to reproduce all the details, such as the access ladders on the circulations or at the front of the buffer beam. That's why the model now comes with a little more clip-on parts, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to run the radius.
Den Radius gar nicht fahren könnten. Auch dieses Modell ist wieder
The model is largely made of metal. There is a 5-pole motor in the boiler and the MFX Plus decoder with loudspeaker in the tender. We have built-in cab lighting, firebox flickering and triple headlights that changes with the direction of travel. The third headlight can be switched separately front and rear. There is a coupler on the tender and also between the locomotive and tender. The locomotive tender distance can be shortened to a minimum, and there is a built-in smoke set that is digitally switchable.
Und dann haben wir noch einen eingebauten Rauchsatz, der digital schaltbar ist.
Some accessories, such as the ladders on the circulation, are not yet mounted here. The model reflects the condition between 1993 and 2003. At that time, museum vehicles also had a third headlight.
Also die E-Maschine ist
The E-engine is very popular not only among railroad connoisseurs and model railroaders, but also among the general public. Everyone knew it because it is considered the Danish steam locomotive, although it originally came from Sweden.
Also das ist so eine ganz eigene Lokomotive.
This engine has a very special feel to it. It is quite different. A beautiful model, a beautiful locomotive.